Hi, it's WRTV's Ray Steele. I hope you like this video. In fact, I hope you will click that like button down there and click the subscribe button too so you don't miss the new stuff. Or you can click the subscribe button at the end of this video. Really appreciate it. Our insiders are back, and a whole lot happening, right before we taped this, literally. Abdul-Hakim Shabazz from IndyPolitics.org, Ali Bartlett, Republican, joining us for the first time, and Democrat Brian Gaddie is back with us as well. The doctor from Indianapolis who was called out by Attorney General Todd Rokita, as it turned out, did properly file the termination of pregnancy report after she performed an abortion for a 10-year-old girl from Ohio who had to come to Indiana for that abortion after a rape allegation because of Ohio's new law that restricts abortion even in cases of rape or incest. Now, the reason we're talking about this is Todd Rokita, the Attorney General, came out with a statement earlier in the day on Thursday, before we had this documentation, in which he said, quoting, aside from the horror caused here by illegal immigration, we are investigating this situation and are waiting for the relevant documents to prove if the abortion and or the abuse were reported, as Dr. Caitlin Bernard, the doctor who performed the abortion, had requirements to do both under Indiana law. So we attempted to get in touch with the Attorney General. He did not respond to us. He did go on Fox News and make some statements, again, before this documentation was given to us by the attorney for the doctor. First of all, let's go to Ali. As Republicans, you're still working on the exact language of the legislation that's coming in the special session, which we expect a week from Monday when lawmakers do return, that will restrict abortion. Does what the Attorney General did here in bringing this case to light and in going on Fox News to talk about it, how does that hamper Republicans perhaps in crafting this bill? Because there are a lot of competing thoughts out there about how far abortion restrictions in this state should go.
Yeah, thanks for the question. As it relates to this matter that Attorney General Rokita brought to light, I don't think that this necessarily has a massive impact on how the legislature will consider it's conducting its business and in the substance of the bill. I think they're focused on the job that they have to do. And, while this continues to be something that's in the media spotlight, I don't think that this matter in particular will necessarily change anyone's mind. I do think it's a valid consideration. The story is heartbreaking. It's something that should be considered while the legislators are giving the thought they need to give to the legislation. So I think, the story is a good one for them to have in mind. But do I think that it's really going to move the needle substantially? Probably not.
And what do you and Democrats think about what the Attorney General did? The way he did it, and of course, we now have the response. We do have the documentation that this was done legally under current Indiana law, as far as we know. But at the same time, this would seem to play perhaps into Democrats' hands, again, given Democrats' limited power in the special session.
Well, Attorney General Todd Rokita, I think, was grandstanding. He made this announcement on Fox News. So he had to, of course, pander to the religious right wing of the Republican Party. But the real issue here is a 10-year-old child was raped in Ohio. And I don't think anyone, regardless of whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, thinks a 10-year-old child should have a child. And that is just a monstrous act. And the thing about being pro-choice, you can actually be pro-life and be pro-choice. Now, I know people think, well, how's that possible? Because you don't want your particular beliefs shoved down someone else's throat. I'm Catholic, and my church obviously is a pro-life church. So all my life growing up going to St. Joan of Arc, Bishop Chatard High School, I'm a Catholic school product. So all my life I've been exposed to the pro-life message. But at the same time, as a Catholic, I don't think I should have the right to shove my particular beliefs as a Catholic down other people's throats. That's why I'm pro-choice. So this is just really a tragic situation with this 10-year-old child that had to come to Indiana and have an abortion because, again, she's a child herself. That I don't want us to lose sight about that. I just think Attorney General Todd Rokita was playing to the right-wing religious base of his party. And I just think he made a tragic mistake, pursuing that. I just think that was a really bad political blunder on his part.
Let's go to the Attorney General's favorite credentialed journalist, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz. Abdul, this would not be something that I don't think Republican leadership, the governor certainly would want right now as they are trying to come up with whatever legislation they're going to put forth.
Yes, you're absolutely right. A couple of things. Number one, the situation we saw with the 10-year-old and leaving Ohio and coming to Indiana, get ready for a lot of that to happen, because once Roe v. Wade has been turned back over to the states, this is what we're going to see. One state has very restrictive abortion rights. Other state has more permissive abortion rights, so people are going to travel to those states. If it's rape or incest, going to be a question about was there a police report filed, was this a minor? So I would expect a lot more of this to happen down the road. Now, with respect to Indiana lawmakers, I think they're all breathing a big giant sigh of relief right now that Kathleen Delaney, who I know, who is an attorney, got that form. And the form was filled out on July 2nd, which was like 2 days after the abortion procedure had taken place. So this whole thing about, we're going to take her license and she's an activist playing doctor, those are some serious charges. And if I were the Attorney General, I'd be getting my lawyers right now to be sued again by somebody for defamation and some other things. And actually, Ray, just a personal, I'm surprised that the Attorney General didn't to speak to our friends at RTV6, because Todd's never met a camera he didn't like.
I can't speak to that. I wasn't the reporter who tried to contact the Attorney General yesterday, but yeah, he did not.
I said he's a grandstander, so obviously grandstanders like cameras.
Well, now, that being said, before all of this came out, before the Attorney General got involved, we had heard earlier this week that the governor had sort of walked back some of what he had said, or at least that's how it was reported. I know in the New Capitol Chronicle that the governor had said initially he had, quote unquote, no red lines when it came to legislation. And Ali, some people took that to mean that, well, he might just sign whatever comes on his desk, regardless of what that is, restrictions, no restrictions. And there's been a lot of news about, more about what some pro-abortion restriction groups like Indiana Right to Life are in favor of this week. What do you think about what the governor said this week, that he is being very coy, and really Republicans as a whole, with very few exceptions, they're not saying what they're for or against in advance of lawmakers coming back?
Yeah, so as for the governor's comments, the clarification that he made in regard to his statements makes sense to me. He clarified that he was trying to say that he meant there were no ultimatums put forth by him and his office in relation to the legislation. That makes sense to me. He's obviously not trying to direct the legislative process from his position, and I think he intended for that statement to mean he would consider whatever comes to his desk, not that he had any hard lines related to what he would or wouldn't sign. He's going to read and consider whatever comes to his desk, which makes sense to me. As for the legislature, I know there's been some criticism about the length of time they're taking to go into special session, and whether or not there have been drafts released of potential legislation. This is a very complex issue. This is an emotional issue. And so I think to criticize the time they're taking to do their due diligence on this, to speak with their constituents, to speak with experts, with interest groups, I think we can't criticize them for that. I think we would criticize either way. Why would we want them to move too quickly on such important legislation? In my mind, them taking the extra time to get this right is not something that we should be critical of at this point. I think they're moving as quickly as they can in a way that is going to be, most efficient, but also trying to get this right the first time around.
Let me let Ali address one more thing, and Brian, then I'll come to you next. But one criticism from Democrats has to do with the other issue that's going to be tackled in the special session, and that's inflation relief. When the special session was initially called, the feeling or the vibe from the governor's office was that Hoosiers need inflation relief now. So we're going to call a special session. But now this special session is happening way down the road. If we need inflation relief now, by the time lawmakers actually come back, gas prices are going to keep falling. Gas prices are like 60, 70 cents cheaper now than they were when the governor was talking about inflation relief and the need for a special session.
Yeah, I get what you're saying and I understand the criticism there, but it cuts both ways because it also costs taxpayer dollars to bring the legislature back into multiple special sessions. When we're talking about a 3 to 4 week difference, to me, to bring 150 legislators back to Indianapolis for multiple special sessions may be more burdensome than it's worth in some ways. I can't say that with certainty. I don't know what the final outcomes of either of these legislative initiatives will look like. But when we're talking about logistics and practicality, when we're talking 3 to 4 weeks difference, does it make sense to come back twice for 2 special sessions? I think it's all about logistics and just being practical in that way.
Brian, what do you think as far as the speed of this? Because Democrats have been critical of all the silence from Republicans as to what's going to be in the abortion legislation, and also the lack of speed of inflation relief, which you are on the record as being for the governor's proposal for inflation relief. What are Democrats thinking? And at the same time, I keep wondering about messaging from Democrats too, because I see statements and emails, reporters see statements and emails, but if you really wanted to get a message out there, whether it's about abortion legislation or inflation, one would think that there would be ads on social media, and there would be a lot more noise, if you will, coming from the Democratic side.
Well, Drew Anderson, our communications director, that's his shop and he handles that, and he's doing a very good job for our party. Now, for how we would handle inflation relief, that is why the special session was called in the first place, is because of inflation relief. And somehow, when the ruling came down on Dobbs from SCOTUS, from the United States Supreme Court, then all of a sudden now the General Assembly has shifted, and now they're focused on, well, what are we going to do about a woman's right to choose? And again, that is the most personal, and I agree with my good friend Ali. It's by far the most complex emotional issue in American politics, is the issue of abortion. You can actually see points of view on both sides. And I just wish there was a way we could come together on this issue, because it's just so vexing. It's complex. But at the same time, I really believe a woman has a right to choose. A woman should have a right to control her own body. And that's where I come down on this issue. And like I said earlier, as a Catholic, it's personal to me, because my own church is against abortion. But at the same time, I don't believe that government should control a woman's body. I don't think legislators in Indianapolis or in Washington should tell a woman what to do with her body. And I know I know there's people who don't agree with that position, but that's my position. So that is why the General Assembly was called, and the session was to do inflation relief. And somehow we got sidetracked on abortion. So I hope they get back to what they were supposed to do, which is to provide economic relief for Hoosiers.
Well, Abdul, from what we're hearing behind the scenes, I'm sure you're hearing the same thing. It sounds like Republicans, at least not at all levels, don't agree on what kind of inflation relief or what should be in that part of the special session once they get to that topic.
Exactly, because originally the inflation relief was set for Hoosier taxpayers, excuse me, those Hoosiers who filed an income tax return. But you have a lot of Hoosiers, particularly senior citizens, who don't pay income taxes because they're getting Social Security, or folks who are getting disability. And so the big question is, how do you provide tax relief to those folks who don't necessarily file income taxes? That's where they're sort of stuck right now. And it seems kind of complicated, because you can't just print off stimulus checks to anybody and everybody. Because the state of Indiana doesn't have a printing press. So I think on the tax relief issue, that's where the logjam is right now, is how do they provide tax relief to those Hoosiers who don't pay income taxes, who are at the lower end of the income scale, who are really getting hit by inflation. Ray, you're absolutely right. The way they've been going, inflation may not be an issue by the time lawmakers get back, because gas is down. Like, I'm down in French Lick today, and gas is like $4.49, which was almost unheard of. It was like $5.29 a month ago.
Well, we'll see about that. And also, as we found out this week, there's still people waiting on that first automatic tax rebate that still hasn't arrived in their bank account, or if it's a hard check in the mailbox.
It's like that in Shabazz household. We're waiting for our refund check. So there we go.
You're still waiting? Oh my goodness. You're an attorney, Bill. Come on. I mean,
exactly.
Anyway, very quickly before we're done here, let's go national a little bit. I want to talk about some polling that was out this week regarding, I guess it's never too early. Well, it is too early to talk about the 2024 presidential race, but when you're in politics, it's never too early. And there was a couple of polls out this week on the favorability of former President Donald Trump among Republicans and President Biden among Democrats. Let's start with Democrats, Brian. A poll that the New York Times put out, I believe it was the Siena College poll, said that 64% of Democrats did not want President Biden to run for re-election in 2024. However, same poll said that 92% said that they would vote for Joe Biden if he were the nominee again in 2024. Sounds like a double message there. Why the disparity there when you ask most Democrats about how they're feeling about the work of President Biden so far?
They didn't poll me, because if they would have polled me, I definitely support President Biden running for re-election in 2024. He's doing a great job. And I know my good friend Ali, I'm sure Abdul as well, don't agree with that. But President Biden is doing a great job. When you consider who he had to take over from, I think he deserves to be graded on a curve, as we all know, in college and grad school and law school. But anyone taking over from Donald Trump was going to have one heck of a time trying to get this country turned around. And you look at the former guy that's out there, he's out there stirring up dust. He's talking about running again. I don't know if he's running for president or is he running to keep from going to prison. Who knows? I mean, he may not want to get indicted by Merrick Garland or the prosecutor down there in Georgia or Tish James up there in New York. But I just think that when you look at what President Biden is doing, gas prices are falling. You just said that earlier, Ray. Inflation is starting to get under control. I think we're going to do a lot better in these midterms than people give credit for. In fact, I've even talked about that before, Ray, that if our message is as Democrats that we have taken this country in a different positive direction than what was happening under the last 4 years under the former guy, twice impeached, Donald Trump, then I think Americans will see, yeah, they are the grown-up party. They should be allowed to remain in control of Congress. So I do think we're going to do a lot better than people give credit for. But yeah, President Biden will be our nominee and he will be reelected. You hear it right here first.
All right. Well, we'll hold you to that. It's July of 2022.
Absolutely.
We'll
it.
stamp this. Now, I don't know if Ali will make a similar prediction about former President Trump, but same polling out this week. There were a couple of polls showing that about half of Republicans don't want Trump to run again in 2024. And yet, at the same time, he is the nominal 2024 Republican nomination frontrunner. A bit of a dichotomy and a lot more going on the Republican side right now, of course, given what we are learning from the January 6th committee hearings, Ali. So at the same time, you've got half the party with the former president and half who say they're ready to move on. But let's be honest, a good chunk of them would probably vote for him if he were the nominee again.
Yeah, I think the dichotomy comes in and it's where, I do disagree with my friend Brian on the job that President Biden is doing right now. And I think that's where the dichotomy comes in, right? Do Republicans necessarily want President Trump as the nominee? As you just stated, half of us don't. But would we see the lesser of two evils argument, which I think people on both sides would see? Yes. So I think that's where the dichotomy comes in. As to whether or not President Trump will be the Republican nominee, I couldn't even fathom to guess right now. I think we are seeing that shift away from the allegiance that we initially saw with President Trump. And I think that's a good thing. I think that our party is evolving and exploring other options. And I think we're going to put forth a really great candidate in 2024. We're going to rally behind that person no matter what, because like I said, I don't agree that our country is headed in the right direction. I want to see our country headed in the right direction, back to the economy that we had a little over 2 years ago, and even beyond that. So I think whatever happens with the Republican primary, I think we are going to be, sweeping in the midterms, and I can't wait to see what's next on the Republican side.
President Biden's created more jobs than Donald Trump. So I don't know why people are saying he's not doing a great job.
Well, it's hard when you're creating jobs, but there aren't people to fill them. So we can have jobs, but if people aren't working, and it doesn't really matter.
And a lot of people aren't working.
Abdul, we've gone over as to how we really shouldn't be talking about the 2024 campaign yet, but we are. So since we are, the January 6th committee, a lot more testimony coming out this past week, more to come. how will that impact the Republican race ultimately one way or the other? Because there's a lot of damning information about the former president that's come out so far, and as I said, likely more to come.
I think with the January 6th commission, I think where you sit depends on where you stand. If you weren't a fan of the president, you're not a fan of the president. If you're a fan of the president, you think he's getting railroaded by a partisan committee. So I think it maybe moves the needles on the margins just a little bit. But at the end of the day, not that much. Now, if there's criminal charges filed, that's a different ball of wax. But I do want to say just real quick with Ali and Brian and the polling we just talked about a couple seconds ago, it seems to me that Republicans, Democrats they love Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but they're not in love with Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Well, we'll leave it at that. And who knows, we might say something different the next time the Insiders gather. Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, Ali Bartlett, Brian Gaddie, always appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.